Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session on the future of work presented by Deloitte and Procedureflow, where we're going to be taking an inside look at government knowledge management. And and today's session is going to be recorded, so we'll make sure that it's available for future reference. So with that, why don't we get started? I'd first like everyone to reflect on this question. We often ask industry leaders, what's the one thing that you can action to enable your workforce, making the most impact to services that they deliver to citizens? And a growing number of organizations are focusing on knowledge management and positioning to invest in solutions that will enable the workforce to continue to drive positive citizen experiences and, of course, build public trust. So today's discussion, I believe, is more than just knowledge management. It's about how we solve increasingly complex problems for citizens. It's about prioritizing the employee experience and creating an integrated information sharing culture across our teams. And the fact is that the way that we work has changed significantly, and organizations are not prepared. So with me today, I'm pleased to have several industry advisors to help us explore these challenges and highlight key industry trends and leading practices. So we have John O'Leary. John heads up our state and local research for the Deloitte Center of Government Insights, which studies public sector innovation. And John is also the former Commissioner of Unemployment Assistance in Massachusetts, where he oversaw a staff of 750, including a sizable contact center. Welcome, John.
Hi, thanks, Jarek. Great to be here.
Thank you. And Amy Weber as well. Amy leads Deloitte's enterprise knowledge transformation offering, working with leaders across industry to improve service delivery operations. And as a senior IT professional, Amy has a decade of supporting operational improvement and technology implementation. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, everybody. Derek, did you want to share your slides?
Yeah, certainly. I believe I thought I was. I apologize.
Because Derek, our pictures look really good in those slides. So just want to put our best foot forward.
Yes, of course.
I actually had a professional photographer, and I get like my hair is like this, and I have my hand copying Brad Pitt. It's really good.
I was skinnier back then, which is always good.
There we go. My apologies.
No, it's not that one. It's the plant one.
Okay. Can everyone see our panel today?
Yep, we are good.
Wonderful. Apologize for that. So Micah, thanks for that, and a good way to segue into you. Mike is with us today as well, VP of Product at Procedureflow, knowledge management expert and enthusiast. He is knowledge-centered services certified and has a passion for knowledge sharing. And he's been helping organizations innovate their knowledge management capability throughout his career. And myself, I'm Derek Fitzgerald. I lead Deloitte's National Service Strategy and Operations offering. And I've had the pleasure of working with clients like yourselves across the globe, across the private and public sector to help elevate the future of service and operations. And today, I'll be your host. So let's get into it. So John, I'd like to start with you. You study trends in government. What are some of the key trends that you're seeing today?
Sure. Well, one of the things I would say is if I were to try to describe government in a single word, it would be, overwhelmed. And that was true before the pandemic. And the pandemic certainly accelerated that feeling of being overwhelmed by technological change and some of the daunting problems and challenges that government is being asked to solve in society these days, or being asked to address, particularly in terms of knowledge. However, I would say that we're seeing three big things. Number one is we're certainly seeing a significant resignation and retirement from the public sector particularly, which means that skills and knowledge are going out the door. It is very difficult right now for government to effectively compete with the private sector, particularly in the areas of professional folks with project management and change management experience, and also technical skills. So a big challenge, attracting and keeping technical professional employees. The second shift is the big shift to hybrid work. I mentioned that the pandemic accelerated change. we conducted a massive experiment in what happens when people don't come into the office. And it was sort of a 0 to 60, or maybe it was 5 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour in a very short period of time due to the pandemic. And what we found is that, hybrid work mostly works. So we're not seeing people returning to 100% going into the office 5 days a week, 9 to 5 in the public sector as they were before. There's a lot more hybrid, but that also puts on different demands in terms of how people, particularly newcomers to an organization, learn what they're supposed to do. You can't just pop your head over the cubicle and ask a neighbor what you need to do. So knowledge management becomes more important in that way too. And then the last thing we're seeing is a big investment in digital data, automation, artificial intelligence. We're definitely seeing a continued big move towards technology.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I guess from your perspective, how are governments responding to these shifts?
Yeah, I mean, it's really that emphasis on digital, right? During the pandemic, if you weren't digital, you really were at risk of being overwhelmed. And we actually saw in a number of contact centers, when there was a demand surge, if the contact center was such that, in order to handle double the volume, you needed double the people, you couldn't do it, right? You can't double your staff overnight. And with digital doesn't care about volume, right? The cloud doesn't care about the number of users. So being digital was a real advantage. And then the other thing is that, government is under pressure because they're being compared to the best in the private sector. People get, hotel bookings and Amazon shopping and things like that. They're experiencing great online experiences. And if they don't get that from government, they're disappointed. And in fact, we did a survey and some research, and we found a very strong correlation between the experience people have in an online transaction with government really influences how they view their government in terms of positively or negatively, and in terms of do they trust their government.
So does this mean more automation?
So it's tricky, right? We are definitely seeing more automation, more self-service, more bots, more automated language translation, artificial intelligence. A government was so overwhelmed during the pandemic that they learned we need to be as agile as the private sector, and that means making use of the technology that enables that.
That makes complete sense. So, I mean, maybe just going a little bit further from that is, what does that mean for the workforce? Are employees being de-emphasized?
Yeah, so you would think so, right? It's like, oh, you're gonna replace people with technology. That is not the case at all. What we're really seeing is actually employees are becoming more important because the automation is offloading for the most part the routine transactions, and what that leaves behind is the really hard stuff, the empathy, the ability to introduce change and things, that the higher level human skills and management skills that are necessary to make good use of technology, right? Technology can be good or bad. It can be really frustrating if it's not done well. So no, employees and supported employees who are supported by technology, that's really sort of the focus right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great message. And I know you recently wrote a paper on the future of government, contact centers. What's the big takeaway that you can tell us a bit about that?
So I would say that the number one insight is that significant improvement is possible. The ability to leverage technology to make for a better customer experience, a better employee experience, and to better fulfill the mission of the agency, it is doable. There are technologies that have come out in the past 5 or 10 years that can be leveraged by government to make their contact centers much more better providers of a great citizen experience. So it's sort of a good news that technology can enable great improvement in this area.
Yeah, I think we hear that as well, John. And I think those are great perspectives. And thank you for sharing these excellent insights. It seems to me like a bit of a balance, right? I mean, we definitely need to automate. We have to control cost. We have to be efficient in that way and leverage, to be tech enabled. we also have to remember now what's the workforce now left with to struggle with, and perhaps it's increasingly complex problems and solutions, and how we're enabling that. So thank you for that feedback and the insights. Always a pleasure.
The one thing I'd say is that it's almost impossible to provide great client service without happy and engaged employees. So bringing in technology can't be isolating and off-putting for employees. It's got to be seen as a great value add for them as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great message. You know what, that actually leads to some of the conversation now. Amy, I'd like to move to you, if I could, as to get your perspectives as a knowledge leader. You know, John, referring to, organizations investing in the workforce, supporting reskilling, upskilling, new tools for employees to help deliver services to citizens. What are some of the challenges you're seeing leaders face today around knowledge and enabling the workforce?
Well, I would echo everything that John said. Employees now more than ever need to be able to rely on digital knowledge that's really easy to find and access and follow and interpret. And they need to be able to trust, as John said, trust the information that is in there. So we need to make sure that the KM programs are best suited to overcome these challenges. And I don't think any of these will surprise anyone. The big one being that knowledge is stored all over the place in multiple systems, and not every employee will have access to those systems. So they get really frustrated because they're trying to navigate and search for information through a bunch of disorganized, outdated, and disconnected systems. It makes it difficult for employees to search, but also to share information. And for the people who are tasked with trying to maintain and update it, it's almost impossible for them to keep everything accurate and up to date. It drives a lack of accountability and ownership for knowledge assets, and doesn't create results in also a lack of resourcing that is needed to support both the management and the maintenance of those assets. And a lack of quality assurance and standardization across the business causes just inefficiencies, misinformation, and lots of unnecessary escalations. What we see in terms of how that plays out in the marketplace is the challenges are really driving some of the trends that John spoke of, and really a shifting of priorities. So leaders are really focusing on how to capture and document critical knowledge from those subject matter experts before they resign, or now we're seeing the great retirement, so before they retire, and then trying to digitize that expert knowledge into one single source of truth. So all employees, no matter where they are, can easily find it, use it, and also share it across the organization. Enabling knowledge collaboration and sharing across teams and regions, in some cases even countries. Being easily able to identify areas of process automation, simplification, and improvement is something that people are really looking at and investing in. And to John's point, where the automation is taking away the really simple routine tasks, ensuring that we have empowering and upskilling employees to deal with the really hard stuff that is left over. It's a really complex processes, emotionally charged calls that just that automation isn't set up to handle well.
No, that's great. That's great feedback and insight, and I suspect people on the phone can certainly relate to some of the challenges there. And we've been using the term, enterprise knowledge. I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about what this is and why it's important.
So when we talk about knowledge management, most people kind of go to content management where they're thinking about SharePoint or folder structure, but knowledge management really is so much more than that. And what is great about, if there has to be a silver lining to the pandemic, is that it really caused the disruption that we needed for organizations to start to acknowledge the importance of their organizational knowledge assets and treat it as a strategic asset and competitive advantage. So now we're trying to capture all of that knowledge before it walks out the door. So knowledge management is an end-to-end process, and it's not just content management. It's about creating, gathering, organizing, sharing, and being able to analyze your knowledge assets in a way that makes it really, really easy for employees to access it, understand it, and then also retain it. What's happened is that since everyone now went into a remote or hybrid, if they're coming back into the office part of the time, the result is that most workers and employees now spend 25% of their time unproductively each week, either searching for information or trying to find out who the right person I need to ask, and waiting for them to get back to me, or worse still, even recreating information that already exists and storing it on their desktop, which is bad for two different reasons. It means that we don't know what they're using. They could be using an outdated version. The flip side of that is if they have a best practice that should be shared with the rest of the organization, there's no way for other employees to know what they're doing.
No, that's quite the problem, right? Around 25% of time unproductive. It sounds like a real efficiency opportunity. And it sounds like it's a bit broader than just the technology as a solution, but I'm wondering, what does good enterprise knowledge look like then?
So when we go into work with the client on setting them up and starting them on their knowledge management journey, we take a very holistic view of knowledge management. Again, it's more than just about the content. It's more than just about the technology. We would never go in and just do a tech implementation without making sure that the knowledge management program is set up as a framework center of excellence. And when we say that, we're talking about these 6 different dimensions that cut across strategy, people, process, and technology. And this is what a good knowledge management program looks like, and it'll make sure that it's sustainable and scalable as your organization grows. So we want to make sure that the KM strategy links up to the broader enterprise goals and objectives, and that it can scale to support future growth and any other transformation or innovation initiatives that the business has. We want to make sure there's a well-defined leadership and governance structure to make knowledge decisions, and that will also ensure that ownership, accountability, and resourcing to support the program are baked right in from the start. We want to identify skills and key behaviors and motivators to ensure that we get the user adoption and that we're really encouraging and facilitating a culture of knowledge sharing instead of knowledge hoarding. Really user-focused content, processes, and practices that facilitate the management of knowledge assets, and as well as defining relevant KPI so that we're continually assessing and improving the effectiveness and efficiency of the program. And then the last dimension, of course, is the technology piece that really should be a single source of truth, but it should be enabling and empowering employees to be able to find the information they need, but also be easy to maintain and easy to contribute. The employees that are on the front lines truly are the best people that should be suggesting changes to your processes. So we want to make sure that any system that goes into place has the ability for them to comment and contribute to those.
That's really interesting. I mean, it seems like there's an element of understanding what your current maturity is around knowledge, and it's not just the technology, but you're looking for that tech-enabled center of excellence, which includes the people, the process, as well as the technology.
And I might add there too, Derek, just from a KCS perspective, when you go through that certification and training, one of the things that they talk about later on is just how critical the leadership piece of it is. Like basically, if the CEO is not on board, then it doesn't happen because it's counterintuitive for people to document. Like they don't get rewarded. Like nobody gets like a raise or a bonus for like writing down what they know, right? They get paid for executing. And so a lot of times with like tech support, where KCS came from and different places like that, they actually the leadership has to shift the reward model to say, we actually give bonuses and raises and promotions based on how many good knowledge-based articles that you write that get linked to by all the other people versus, I solved the Sev1 issue and then everybody claps and cheers for that, right? And so it's benefiting the knowledge sharing program versus the knowledge hoarding in practical ways, and the leadership has to be on board. So that one always sticks out to me as like if you fail there, you might as well not do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think I know exactly what you mean. And this really is about creating that knowledge sharing culture across the enterprise, and that starts with the strategy and the leadership layer to help really promote that across the business and with the people too. And then they're enabled with the tools and tech that they need. So if we do all this well, Amy, what are some of the benefits that we would expect to see across the business?
So if we hit this out of the park and we do it well, this is what we can expect to see. Significant reduction in new employee onboarding and training, improved employee productivity, task completion and efficiency, improved time to proficiency and ramp time for new employees, improved quality and consistency because everyone is all working from the same playbook, which is what we want, improved employee customer satisfaction and customer retention, significant reduction in escalations and post-training support, and just being able to quickly identify areas for process automation and improvements. In addition to this, we also work with contact center BPO outsourcers, and Deloitte also provides its own outsourcing managed service, and being able to share knowledge from the client to the outsourcer is critical. And the flip side of that is the client actually being able to maintain ownership of its IP in the knowledge and the process. In the event that that contract comes to an end, they own the IP and can take it with them, either when they revert back to in-house or they're entering into a contract with a new BPO outsourcer.
No, that makes complete sense. Obviously, being very purposeful about knowledge and making sure that you're developing your knowledge assets, but you're also ensuring ownership of them, especially with those types of relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of provide a real use case example, we recently worked with a large freight and package courier to implement Procedureflow within their contact center, and they, even just with the pilot group, realized a significant reduction in average handle time, escalations up to their coach line, their tier 2 support. And they were quickly able to upskill their employees to deal with the really complex pre and post delivery tracking cases. And they've seen significant reduction in operational efficiency, customer satisfaction and trust, and some significant cost savings as well.
That's fantastic. And when we think about the journey, right, of a citizen, obviously where we can begin to enable greater self-service and that automation piece to deflect volume, that's fantastic where it works. And sounds like we've been talking about then there's the more complex and maybe emotionally charged work that comes through to the employee and how we're enabling them to be able to drive those better interactions. And it's not just about the handle time, which there's all these benefits, but it sounds like there's also kinds of benefits to the next level of back office teams, et cetera, reducing escalations, creating that kind of flow of work, but moving knowledge from right to left and making sure that you're empowering your front line.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think those are, I would see those would be significant benefits to the business. So we touched a little bit on kind of some of the functionalities of that. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about this digitizing knowledge and some of the characteristics you would see from a leading knowledge platform that maybe folks should be considering.
So when we go in and start with an engagement with the client, we're doing a current state analysis of what their current KM tech stack looks like, what solutions they're currently using. Usually it's more than one. And if they have multiple departments, they're all kind of doing their own different thing. So we want to make sure that we're presenting a solution that is fit for purpose and that is attuned to what the customer is going to need. When we look at a leading knowledge management solution, these 8 capabilities are really what we're looking for. Again, not every capability is needed depending on the customer's use case, but this is kind of the top 8. So again, collaborate and create. Really easy for users to create new content, submit it for approval. It's easy for the administrators and the approvers to maintain and update, and the ability for users to provide feedback and comments is really important. Again, employees who are actually doing the work are the best ones to make suggestions to your processes. Really robust search and find features, the ability that users can bookmark and save their favorite content so they don't have to search for it every single time. Users can be assigned different access and can have to different groups. The content can be segmented just for those specific groups, so they're not seeing stuff that isn't relevant to them in their day-to-day. Full reporting and analytics to support user adoption, identify trends, and assess against those defined KPIs that I talked about earlier. It has the ability to integrate with other technologies and systems, and we've noted here CCaaS and CRM for contact center. Again, integrations are not absolutely necessary, but some customers want them. And then multi-format, multi-team. So multi-format, we want it to be able to flex with those visual guided flows that really provides employees with super clean, concise, easy to follow step-by-step work instructions. But some use cases where it's really policy-driven decision-making, they also need the ability to provide information to its users in text. So be able to flex to traditional text-based formats as well. And then multi-team, so just be able, whether it's multi-team, multi-department, multi-projects, the ability to just divide up users into specific groups and segment the content based on their specific profile. So again, we don't necessarily need all of these based on the customer's use case, but a good knowledge solution should be able to flex at least to meet all 8 of these.
Yeah, those are really core, it feels like, and it certainly seems like there's a lot to unpack, but it's definitely come a long way from the old traditional style of knowledge that perhaps maybe some of us have come from. Well, welcome aboard. Here's your 17 binders. Please go ahead and read them up and refer to them as you need them. This is really becoming what you're talking about when you say about digitizing knowledge and creating some more tech-enabled capability to enable your workforce. So I think that's exciting. I think about what the future is. So this has been great information, Amy. Thank you for sharing that. It helps us to really understand what knowledge is and how to get it done right. I think with that, it probably, Mike, it leads more to a conversation for you now, where I want to hear a bit about your perspectives. I know you've been doing this for some time with Procedureflow. Could you share some of your perspectives on some of the big challenges you're seeing across industry today?
Yeah, for sure. I would echo everybody here, in terms of what we're saying. We all saw the big shift here for the last 2.5 years of something that was already happening that got accelerated through COVID and sending everyone home. We noticed immediately that people's priorities changed, and it went from a really long list that was kind of not really clear across the board to everybody saying, okay, do we have telephony at home? Like, do we have telephony in the cloud? That was kind of like, day one. Can we make phone calls, or can we, from a contact center perspective or otherwise? And then the second thing was knowledge management, which, I would have said people would have pushed lower. They would try to do other interesting things. And all of a sudden it was just like, hey, you can't tap people on the shoulders. You can't just walk around the building anymore. And so now what are you going to do? And the time loss that you talked about is real. And the struggle is real in terms of that impacting. If you don't know what you're doing and the customer's asking you, whoever that customer is, in this case, maybe a citizen at SMB or, what have you, you don't have an answer for them, you have the wrong answer, and it's just going to be really bad. It's going to create a lot of horrible things. And so add to that turnover, all of a sudden you can be in your basement in New Brunswick and you can work for some US company and make US dollars. So now everyone has an equal opportunity at all the jobs in the world. And so you saw massive turnover, people going out, finding their career paths and stuff. So turnover, SME loss, you guys talked about retirement. So then what do, right? You've got all these new people coming on, you have onboarding issues, there's all these SME knowledge that you've got to learn, exceptions that are built up over time. And so, you put this all into a boiling pot and it's not going to be good for the end customer. It's not going to be a good outcome. And so I love, there's a quote by Warren Buffett that says, it's good to learn from your mistakes. It's better to learn from other people's mistakes. And then Eleanor Roosevelt has maybe even a better one. It says, learn from the mistakes of others. You can't live long enough to make them all yourself. And so if you apply that to what we're talking about now, and you say there's a job to be done, people need to know SME knowledge that was built up over many years, and they need that information to know how to do it. And you can't talk to people. You can't talk to people. What are you going to do? And what do we do? And you go out in the market, you Google it, and people will tell you to write a document. They'll tell you to write text. They'll tell you to, and sure, that's a knowledge-based article, but essentially at the end of the day, you're taking information from somebody's brain, writing out in sentences and paragraphs. And then you have to stop and you have to go, is this for real? Like, are people going to read walls of text in the moment? You know what I mean? Like, water travels the path of least resistance. People are not going to read these documents. They are going to go to Slack and MS Teams, and they're going to call people, and they're going to drain people's time who need to be more productive on other things. And so, if you ask me what is the biggest challenge that we see, it's all the trends we talked about, and then pushing that into wall of text documents, calling that knowledge management, and then saying, there, we did our job, when in reality, nobody's going to be able to use that in a consumable way.
I think that should resonate with all of us. Certainly, those are some real challenges that you're talking about, and it's interesting this. You talk about this, traditionally text-based article style knowledge, SOPs, etc. But I'm hearing terms like visual knowledge management or guided workflows. I'm wondering, can you tell me more about what Procedureflow is and where that shows up to support government?
Mm-hmm. So that's that's our passion. If you can see it, it kind of exudes from me. I'm excited next week. Actually, Sunday I'll be leaving to go back to the trade show circuit and just going out and selling and evangelizing. But what we happened on at the beginning of our journey was that you can take that wall of text stuff and you can turn it into something that's much more consumable and much easier to go through. And you just have to kind of rethink that a little bit. And so what we've done from a Procedureflow perspective, but really, you can do what you will with what I'm about to say. Flowchart, there, I let it out of the cat out of the bag. And it's like, people have a lot of different associations with flowcharts. And so you have to be careful how you talk about it. But essentially, what we've discovered is if you take flowcharts, keep them really small hyperlinked flowcharts, and then link them together, people can drive through them. And what the benefit of that is you essentially get bite-sized information that is consumable in real time. You have shapes that have meaning, like a square can be an action, a diamond can be a decision, and you have arrows that give you direction. And so what that then allows you to do is actually create a navigation container where you take into account 500 to 2,000 different kinds of scenarios that a certain role might run into. Within each one of those scenarios, there's going to be exceptions. That's what SME knowledge is, right? A subject matter expert is somebody who's made all the mistakes in a given field. And so we take account for those exceptions. And then somebody navigating through that can just in real time drive through it, cover off the exceptions, and have a perfect experience without training in a classroom, without memorization, without holding anybody's hand. They're doing this all independently. That's digital knowledge sharing, right? And so the real question is consumability. Is it consumable? The other thing, which I don't want to spend a lot of time on, but I think if you've been in sort of Dilbert land for any amount of time, when you search for something in a company knowledge base, not on Google, you get not great results back. So page ranking doesn't really exist within a firewall environment with domain specific knowledge because there's no organic links that bring things to the top. And so you get text matching on hundreds of thousands of results. So searchability, consumability are massive problems. And by creating a structured thing that you can drive through, you solve both of them. It's instantly consumable and you don't have to do keyword searching because you can navigate the scenario to find what you're looking for. And so with that, if that makes sense, we then we basically have to solve one or two more problems, and so I'll maybe just mention those for a second, and I'll talk about some of the situations where we've seen government use this. So Amy alluded to it in her stuff, where she was saying, we have to set up not just the technology, but we have to set up the program. We have to set up a group of people that maintain and manage and have permissions, and you have to maintain your knowledge. You can do a documentation project, but if you don't maintain it, it's not. You put your pencil down, the business processes change, regulations change, what have you, and then you're back to zero again. And so we have taken a lot of care into looking at crowdsourcing and how do you get feedback from multiple places, the end user who's talking to the client customer, the team leads, the quality assurance people, the trainers, the managers, the directors, the leadership, take it from all these places and keep it evergreen. And so we've just taken on that burden and created really nice usable streams that you can use within product to bring in that feedback from everywhere and keep it evergreen. And that is part of a great KCS program, is maintaining your knowledge and the discipline that goes around that. We just made it easier. And so you put consumability and searchability fixed together with evergreen, maintenance of knowledge, and then we can run really interesting reports on it because it's not a wall of text. It's actually hyperlinked stuff you drive through so that you can see inside people's minds as they're going through the flows, and that produces insights that you can use for continuous improvement and quality assurance. And then if you're a good to great person, spin the flywheel, right? So you've got your as is, it's maintained, you get your reporting data, you spin it, and your business just keeps getting better and more efficient as you run through that. And that's what our customers experience, and that's what we are really passionate about. So you mentioned like kind of I feel like I'm talking a lot here, Derek, so feel free to
No, this
interrupt.
is great, Micah. Please let it continue. If there's any use cases or anything that was quite relevant that you've seen this come to light.
So, Amy alluded to, like, in the contact center space, this is a no-brainer, right? So much turnover, so much training. The customers on the phone, we've got new people, like, we need this to be a great experience. So, reduce training, reduce mentoring, higher quality, better speed. Those are our claims to fame. Then, as you look through other departments and other use cases, it's basically the same principles that apply. And it's just a question of, like, where does knowledge need to flow? Where do people need knowledge right now? Where are the biggest challenges that the organization is facing? So a couple of examples. We had a government that in the justice system, they had, through COVID, had to switch over to telecommunication. And so there was a lot of tech and different things that had to be done, and people were struggling. All these support calls were coming in, they're getting overwhelmed. They put it in Procedureflow. There's virtually no more support calls. Everyone just goes in, follows the flow, off they go, right? So just shifting the behavior of an existing department, not turnover or anything like that, but just shifting to where the problem is. COVID arose, solve the problem, off we go, right? And so you're putting high value people, like really high value people, back to what they're good at, not fiddling with telecommunications technology. Social development, different regions perhaps are using different manuals or different sets of procedures, unifying, maybe 8 different places, unifying that into one process, coming from the clarity within the flows. And so you can immediately that consolidating 8 to 1, you're going to get the benefits of efficiency, not just in the process itself and how that impacts everyone, but also in how you communicate, train, how you maintain all of that information, less meetings, less fights and conflicts and all that kind of stuff. So that streamlining really, in the end, that's my Nana and Grandpa, that they are calling in to get help with, my grandpa had a stroke and there's all these living situations, and the government's there helping them, in this streamlined way. So another example is David Wellborn was asked to set up the COVID response command center within New Brunswick, and he did some work with us recently to talk about that, and it's really impressive. Like, New Brunswick had one of the best responses to COVID, and one of the things that people I think probably didn't appreciate was, you had these vaccines that needed to be refrigerated, they had to be used in a certain period of time, they had to be carefully transported. Where are they coming from? Where are they going to? There's pharmacies, there's long-term health centers where older folks are, and there's all this stuff going on, and he had to get the team together in 6 days, get a command center set up and running within a month. They didn't have any procedures. They had to create them from scratch, and they had to do all of this stuff. And he did it. And he used Procedureflow, and they were able to just quickly ramp people up. They performed so well that they actually started giving them more and more responsibilities for that response center. And it was just, the story that came back was accuracy, execution, speed, just the level of professional support that they're providing. And again, they got accolades for how well they responded within COVID. And I'll try not to get emotional, but like, that's lives, that's human beings' lives on the line. Like, if it is, again, my grandpa, it's like, if you don't get this stuff done and executed properly and in enough time, people are going to die, right? And so it's not always that dramatic, but in this case it was, right? So we're really excited about, government opportunities all over the place where, clients can be better served, citizens can get better results, and we can be part of that.
I love that. I think that you really make it real there, Mike. I appreciate you opening up a little bit about some of those cases and the use cases. And really, to me, it sounds like, this isn't just like we talked about before, like a client services or customer services opportunity, which I think it is. That's a great place where there's a lot of knowledge workers, but it really extends beyond that across the enterprise. And there's all kinds of opportunities where I've heard you use the phrase, making employees experts faster. And I love that.
Yeah.
So thinking about all this, how would you suggest an organization might get started on their journey to modernize, digitize their knowledge capability?
Yeah, there's a lot of things you could say about that, but I think if you watch this presentation from beginning to end, the stuff that John and Amy were sharing in terms of Deloitte's field of expertise is the first place you start, right? It's an assessment. It's saying, where am I? Like, you guys have this benchmark across all these companies of different sizes and shapes and industries and everything. And so let's go to the experts. Let's find out and benchmark ourselves. Where are we at in terms of building a center of excellence? And then you guys might say, oh, you just need to tweak some stuff, that you're doing great here and here. Or you might say, hey, we got to build it from scratch, and we've got the tools and the friends and the partners that can do that. We play one part of that story in terms of building your center of excellence. We feel like we've really nailed down the innovation on consumability of knowledge and the proper representation of it. And our roadmap is really exciting in terms of what we're going to do with that as is process that's mapped and maintained. But there's all the other things, like your telephony, like your quality assurance program, like your voice of the customer, like your, there's just speech analytics. There's there's everything, right? All about that stuff, and so on and so forth, along with the government expertise. So I'd say, that's the first thing. Get an assessment, then start a project really quickly. Like, don't do this thing slowly. Like, start a project, find a place that needs help. We can move fast. You guys can move fast. Like, get in there, fix a problem, get some results, prove it to yourself. That's really important for getting momentum. And then you can share those results with the groups that need to know about it to move things forward. And then I think the joint partnership, if you see the two logos here, like, the joint partnership of this is really the dream team, right? Like, in terms of setting up a knowledge management program that works, and you guys do what you do really well. We do what we do really well. When you marry them together, we're really going to help you transform your knowledge into something that is going to be great. So, a little bit of shameless self-promotion here for both of us, but I think that's the right thing to do.
Now, I like that approach, and we've seen that be very successful, right? I mean, starting small, thinking big, going fast, getting something done, about being agile in your approach, identifying what I would call maybe a short-term challenge, pilot a program around it, select the benefits that you want to drive. And I know that's what this team, like you mentioned, like this is the work that this team here is passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
So all kinds of great things that we can continue to talk about. But that's, Mike, I just want to say thank you for that. I'm really excited about, the future of knowledge. Obviously, the Procedureflow platform has some very unique offerings that we don't see anywhere else. So I think that's going to be of interest of others too, as we engage industry. So thank you. So really, everyone, we're kind of coming to a close, but that's what we wanted to accomplish today. Have a bit of a dialogue around knowledge, some trends we're seeing in industry. I hope it was informative for you. I hope it was a bit inspiring in some cases, and as it was for me. I'd like to say thank you very much to our panel, John, Amy, Micah. It's always a pleasure to speak with you and learn from you. And as well to everyone who joined today. Thank you so much. I know our team would love to hear from you. Any feedback about today's session, feel free to share, ask questions, or reach out. We'd love to have a conversation, perhaps about your own journey, any challenges you might be looking to overcome. So looking forward to hearing from you. That's it, everyone. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks for joining.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.